Licypriya Kangujam is an environmental activist from Manipur, India. On December 11th of last year, she marched onto the plenary stage as COP28 came to a close in the United Arab Emirates and demanded that leaders acknowledge the state of emergency we are in and the fact that there's no time to waste, as millions of people are already being directly impacted by the climate crisis, and the situation is sure to get worse. Although she admits that COP28 was 99% a failure, as most of these UN climate summits have been, COP will have a central role in determining our collective future, so it has to be changed from a fossil fuel summit into an actual climate summit, where the right priorities and a sober assessment of the sort of investment that will be required take center stage. The example she gives is the early agreement at COP28 on a loss and damage fund for the nations in the global south that are now and into the future most impacted by climate change. She says that the loss and damage fund is obviously a good idea, but it could still turn out to be an empty promise, especially if the amount of investment promised by the wealthy nations who are most responsible for the situation remains so pitifully low. It should be said that Licypriya is among the youngest prominent climate activists in the world at 12 years old, and is in many ways a model for what's possible when it comes to young people getting involved in climate politics at the local and global levels. So while she's addressed world leaders at multiple COPs, she's also been campaigning for climate action and climate education in India since 2018. She's a visionary, by the way, in this regard. She's stated many times that there can be no climate movement without climate education. There's been a really moving push to make climate education mandatory in India, in no small part because of the organizing that Licypriya has done. In this conversation, we cover a lot of ground, and that includes talking about the climate disasters that drove her to get involved in the movement. We talk about the implications of comparing her to Greta Thunberg, which she rightly sees as reductive. More than anything, maybe, we talk about the conspicuous lack of political will at the highest levels of power and their disregard for the people most affected by the emergency. The disruption that she decided to create in Dubai could not have happened, she says, without the love and support of her compatriots in the climate movement. They gave her the courage to push powerful people, committed as they clearly are to dragging their feet and running out the clock, to act now. Licypriya insists that she's not a member of any particular political party, and that protest came on spontaneously. What's important to her is the truth, and so she's focused on changing the dominant mindset. Protesting for her is a kind of last resort. She's been forced to protest constantly, to learn how to fight in a world on fire, and she's gotten good at it. But she feels like she's been robbed of a childhood as a consequence. Thankfully, though, there is more positive energy and more concentrated anger in the climate movement now. She doesn't have to do it alone. Young people are getting radicalized by the reality and then acting as a source of inspiration to others as they demonstrate how you can demand a better world. I think a lot of people were very inspired by what you did recently at COP28, the kind of courage that it took to do that.
Mhm.
You decided to, I think a lot of the media kind of described it as you stormed the plenary stage, right?
Right.
Um, and that was a beautiful moment at a time where it felt as though there was like a real lack of like urgency, that right sense of emergency at the international level. So, when you stormed the stage, you were demanding phase out, right? You said your action today will decide our future tomorrow. We are already the victims of climate change. I don't want my future generations to face the same consequences. Um, did you want to just kind of describe what that moment felt like for you, and yeah, like the kind of courage that it did take to make that decision?
Mhm. Well, you see, it just came suddenly in my mind to do that protest, to do that disruption in the high-level plenary session of COP28 because I was really, really frustrated and mad by the lack of political will by our world leaders. Seeing them that they are ignoring our voice and trying to just, fail another cop, another again, and not listen to what we're saying. So I was really frustrated and mad at that point. So it was a sudden thought to protest and just barge in and disrupt that high level session. And when I did that, I was doing that because I just wanted them to hear out my voice, to hear out the voice that I'm representing of those millions of poor vulnerable people and children who are the victims of today's climate crisis, but are not responsible for this. They're innocent. So this is unacceptable at any cost. So we want the climate justice now, and that there is science behind the just phasing of fossil fuels. So we need to, and then again reminding them the urgency of doing it as soon as possible for keeping our temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Before it's too late, before our Earth is going to die, because we don't have any planet B. We only have one Earth. And in that earth, we are in the front lines, even though we're not responsible for this. See, so we wanted a just phase out from the fossil fuels, which is the coal, oil, and gas, the top causes of today's climate crisis. And to do that, I again said that our governments must work together to manage a just transition from the fossil fuels to renewable clean energies. And that's how we're gonna get a temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius and do it before it's too late and as soon as possible. And then after so it was the second last day where I did this disruption of the COP28, and then the next day I returned to India as my visa was over. And then on the day after tomorrow they extended another day in COP28. And then finally, it was 99% failure of COP28. It has become a fossil fuel summit, a climate summit, the fossil fuel summit. It was a complete devastating failure that I could have never imagined. But what can we say? It is hosted by a fossil fuel leader.
Hmm.
And after making a day extension of COP28, a 14-day event to 15-day event, my voice was heard. Our voice was heard. And they adopted to make a just transition to clean renewable energies, to make a complete just phase out of fossil fuels from 2050 and double the renewable clean energies by 2030. So yes, I did the protest. It's everyday thing. We do a lot of protests because that is our last option. We the climate activists.
Yeah, I think you and others moved these leaders, and it is about like moving these leaders to a place where at least finally they're acknowledging, right? Like that fossil fuels are
Right.
at the foundation of so much of it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love the kind of vision too that you communicate that, we need to move in that radically different direction.
Mm-hmm.
You were asked after the protest about the kind of consequences, and you said like the continued use of fossil fuels will cost millions of lives. And I think like just the clarity of the way that you communicate is really powerful. And I wondered, will you go back to COP next year? I mean, the next COP is another fossil fuel summit. It's an oil-rich country, and Azerbaijan produces almost 900,000 barrels of oil a day, and
Mm-hmm.
is in a war with neighboring states. Do you think that you'll be like, do you worry that you'll be blacklisted and barred from the next COP, or are you ready to go again, or are you conflicted?
Of course, I'll go again. Let me tell you this. Like, after making that disruption, the UN police took my badge and then threatened me that this will be your last cop. You will never ever going to attend any other cop from now on. So this is the last cop. Even though they threatened me, I will go to the next COP and to the future COPs as well, because I'm not scared nor worried at all, because this is the sake of our future. The outcome of the COPs, not only COP28, will decide the future of our planet, will decide the future of those millions of children children and people living in this world.
Mhm.
So yes, I will keep on going to other COPs, even though it might have become into a fossil fuel summit, a greenwashing summit, but we will keep raising our voice until we achieve our goal, because we are unstoppable and another world is possible and change is possible. So even though it might have become a fossil fuel summit, in the next other future COPs too, like next year COP29 in Azerbaijan, we will, keep raising our voice until it is again turned into a climate summit,
Mhm.
fossil fuel summit to climate summit, and we will keep barging in, disrupting a lot of many sessions, protests, climate strikes until they listen to our voice, until it is turned to a climate summit, until our goal is achieved. So I'm
Mhm.
not worried, I've taken a lot of risk while doing that, that disruption of COP28 too. But I don't care. It's for the sake of those billions, millions of people who are living in this world who are not responsible. So yes, I will keep fighting until my last breath, until we achieve our goal.
And yeah, I mean, that's amazing, and it has to be a mobilizing message, that you're
Mhm,
just going to keep going, that you keep pushing. One of the things that has been talked about as a win for the climate movement is the promise of like a loss and damage fund or money for climate adaptation.
mhm,
Um, yeah, and people, people who live in the global south, who are, as you say, not responsible, right? Quantitatively not
mhm,
responsible for this
mhm.
emergency, are seen as sort of almost like the beneficiaries of that climate loss and damage fund. Do you see it sort of differently, where it's like it's not something that you sort of I don't know. It's something that you demand, not merely something you deserve, right? Like money for climate adaptation is almost a kind of moral obligation for the most polluting countries in a way.
Mhm. You see, yes, in COP28, it was a big win for the global south, as you have told before, as you've said now, that, the loss and damage fund adaptation by the rich country nations. Well, it's a good start, but it's still not enough. Creating a loss and damage fund, is a good idea, but if it remains empty, it is useless. It's completely useless. So even though it was a big win for the global south, we don't want it in millions, but in hundreds of billions. And we shouldn't
Mm,
be speaking this out. They should know that they should do this and they should do it right now with their real money. It should not be the ones who will, us, the global south people who are innocent, who are not responsible for today's climate crisis, to be asking for the climate finance. They should know this themselves and not make us remind them, again and
hmm.
again, that we want the real money now. We don't want it in any form of loan or debt trap. We want,
Right.
the real money now, and not in millions but in hundreds of billions, if they want to give us the climate justice.
Yeah, and I think like the other thing too is like in terms of climate mitigation, countries in the global south are developing countries as they're sometimes described, like they, ought to be paid to leave their fossil fuels in the ground as well. I think economically speaking, it's hard for a country that has oil reserves or coal reserves to decide we're not going to develop those resources, but they need to not develop those resources. Economically, I think wealthy countries ought to be paying for those resources to stay in the ground. But anyway, you have campaigned for environmental justice since you were 6 years old. I don't know what I was doing when I was 6 years old, like probably just like playing Nintendo, right? I wanted to ask about the roots of your activism in fighting air pollution, especially, but also like biodiversity loss, responding to climate disasters like I guess
Mhm.
Cyclone Titli and the Kerala flood. What were the kind of social or like psychological impacts of those events, and what kinds of positive things did you see in response to them? I ask because I don't think enough people understand what it feels like to experience a climate impact directly, even though obviously many more are feeling it.
So, not six, but ever since a young age, not just Cyclone Titley or Cyclone Fani in 2018 and 19, not just the air pollution or the heat wave crisis. I faced a lot of other climate crises, climate disasters in my own life. And that turned me into a climate activist because, I was one of those people who were suffering. I was one of those children who were suffering in reality. The climate crisis, which people talk about. That this is the worst impacts and we are facing it one, even though we're not responsible for this. So ever since a young age, how did this impact to me was by, lots of thoughts, popped up in my mind that why is this happening? Ever since I was a young age, I have lost my own childhood life because of the failures of our leaders. Because so this is unacceptable at any cost. And after getting those thoughts in my mind from a very young age, I started asking these to my mentors and teachers, and then started working towards, a better environment and a better future, and to save our planet and our future, and to stop this, to stop the climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I shouldn't be doing this at all, I should be playing with my friends, I should be studying, I should be attending my tuitions, I should be attending my schools and
Mm-hmm.
spend time with my family. But
Mm-hmm.
instead, I'm going to different events. I'm coming out on streets, protesting in front of the Parliament House of India. Why? It's
Mm-hmm.
because of the lack of political will. It's because of the failure of our leaders. And I don't want the future generations to be facing the worst impacts again because of their inaction and empty false promises. So
Mm-hmm.
even though I have lost my own, beautiful childhood life, I don't want other thousands of other hundreds of other children to lose theirs too because of the lack of political will of our leaders. So I will keep fighting, until my last breath, until I achieve this goal, which is to have the basic rights to clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and clean planet to live.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like, again, really striking to hear you say that you'll fight to your last breath. I mean, we are talking about the
Mm-hmm,
ability to breathe clean air for like in a
mm-hmm,
very real sense. And in terms of air pollution, obviously, New Delhi is one of the cities that has the most, one of the, most intense forms of air pollution. It's like it's hard to breathe. And for that reason, you invented is it, how do you pronounce it? The Sukifu?
yes, Sukifu.
This device, I guess, alongside a professor named Chandan Ghost, it's been called a symbolic survival kit by some media
Yes.
sources, but I think it's more than that for you, right? What's the sort of legacy, in a sense, of the Sukifu? Do people use it? Was it mostly symbolic, or was it like an actual attempt at, in a way, climate adaptation?
Well, yes, it is a very symbolic device to me, and my device, Sukifu, which is Survival Kit for the Future, sends a strong message to all the world leaders that they have to act now. Otherwise, our future and our planet would be dying soon. So I made that device, I made the symbolic device, to send out this strong message that they have to act now. We have to save our planet. It's yes, it was for the air pollution, but I was also sending this big message, to everyone, not only our leaders, that they should be knowing about this problem, and we must change our behavior to save our planet.
Hmm. And something else that you said a minute ago reminded me, of course, of like Greta Thunberg saying that she shouldn't be here. She shouldn't have to fight. And the comparisons between you and Greta were maybe inevitable, but the way that they're made is clearly like kind of insulting, even a little bit infuriating. And I like that you've expressed kind of anger to some extent, despite the fact that like Greta Thunberg is a friend of yours and a comrade, as it were, in the climate fight.
Mhm.
You've made it clear that you don't like the comparison, that it's deleting your story to do it. To me, it's a little bit not a little
Mhm.
bit, a lot insulting to just describe you as like India's Greta. Like it's just like a news media thing, but it there needs to be more thought put into deciding to look at you as like another version of Greta Thunberg, especially because you started the child movement before Greta became active in the climate movement. So like I don't know. I wondered if you wanted to talk at all about those comparisons, your friendship with Greta Thunberg, and maybe, why you think this thing of describing you this way seems to keep happening despite like your stated resistance to it.
Well, I don't know why it is keep happening to me, comparing me with my friend, with my sister Greta Thunberg. We are good friends. We're still in touch, but I just want to say to all these media people here that not only to the media people, but to everyone in this world, that I am Licypriya. I have my own name, my own identity, and you can't just call me Greta of India, Greta Thunberg of India. I am Licypriya, Licypriya of India.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the issue in a way is like, your idea of leadership, it's like it's this assertion of like, I care. I care, and like the media wants to focus on like stars in a way, right? On celebrities. And so
Mhm.
their view gets really narrow. Where do you think the like what do you think the status of the climate movement is now? Like, are people connected? Are they committed? Are you worried that the movement, because some people talk about how like the movement kind of reached its peak in 2019, 2020 before the pandemic, when you were protesting outside the Indian parliament. Do you think that there is that same degree of energy and collective power in the climate movement? Are you at a point where you can feel the sense of like things are happening, we're gaining momentum, or do you feel like it's still not clear whether you have that momentum?
Well, I feel there are even more people who are, who are having even more courage, who are more into this fight, fighting for our own future and our planet. There might be some people who are also saying that we have reached the peak already, and
Mm,
and 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 I don't, and they're like they're absolutely not into this kind of thing anymore. So that's the negative side, but there's more
mm,
into the positive side, if in my opinion, because you see, people say that climate activists like me and other my friends have inspired them, and to the inspiration and motivation that we have given to them, there are even more children coming out, supporting our movement, and it has even increased a lot of number of people, of youth, of children have also increased in this climate movement. So yes, it is going pretty well, and should that, increase in the number, our voice is also, getting heard, like for example, that disruption I made,
mhm,
it wouldn't have been possible without this love and support from the people. My courage wouldn't have been there. So yes, they've started to listen to our voice. It's not only me who did that disruption. It's because of that, of those many other climate activists who are also protesting, who are also raising out their voice for the same cause that we have. So
mhm.
yes, I feel there is a sudden change in the climate movement, which is the increase in number of people and having even more courage to fight again and again until their last breath too. Not
Mm.
only mine.
And like, part of that is absolutely the way that like, folks in your position kind of derive courage from other people in the movement. But then I think also like the ways that actions like the one you took at COP28 encourage others. So I think there's just this kind of ripple effect that's happening. But part of it too is like there's a role for what's sometimes called climate literacy, right? And climate
Mm-hmm.
education. And I know you've been
Right.
like super active in India on
Mm-hmm.
making that mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder,
Yes.
yeah, just if you wanted to talk about the role of climate literacy and climate education in building the movement. You've said that there is
Hmm.
no climate solution without climate education.
Right.
What did you mean, and have you seen any success in that part of your campaign?
Yes, well, what I mean in climate literacy, in climate education, is that yes, I'll say it again, there will be no climate solution without climate education. So we
Hmm.
need climate education if we want to save our planet and our future in time, because we have no other planet, no planet B. So I have been campaigning this for the last many years, ever since I started my activism. I've campaigned this, for many years. So in that campaign, I have been sending letters and to the Indian government to make climate education as a subject, not in a subject, but a subject
Hmm.
mandatory in every school education curriculum to every state in India. And I will give you the example of two states of India that I have sent the letter to include climate education. Well, you see, the Rajasthan and Gujarat government have already included climate education as a mandatory subject, in their school education curriculum after my request to them, after I sent them the letters. So more than 150,000 schools are now studying climate education in their schools. Children are studying climate change, climate crisis that we're facing today. So
Wow.
it has been a big change, and I'm keep on pushing it forward, not only to the other Indian governments, but you know to also, and also after that, many European countries and even the United States of America also have the climate education as a mandatory subject. But still, I'm also, whenever I'm meeting a world leader or I'm using social media or writing letters, I'm always, convincing them, telling them again and again to include climate education, because that's also one of my goals. And I'll keep
Hmm.
fighting until I achieve my goals, until we
Yeah.
achieve my goals.
I mean, it's like such an important kind of pillar of, in a way, just transition. I mean, like, I love that. And I mean, again, just inspired by the kind of the sense of direction that you have, and how informed you are. Like, it's amazing. Um, I was curious about your sense of the need for solidarity between young people. And yeah, maybe especially like your sense of the need for solidarity between young people in the global south. I mean, I know that you made trips to countries in Africa, for example. Did you
Mhm.
encounter other young people who really talked about like wanting to join the fight? And is that sort of solidarity between different countries and communities in the global south itself a source of hope for you?
Yes, I have been inspired by many climate activists, to make me join in this climate movement. But there has been other many people, many children and youth who have been inspired by me too, and by my other climate activist friends. Whenever I interact, with one of my, global South people, my friends, one of them told me that they have never really had the courage to be in the climate movement, but
Mhm.
after they saw my work, after they saw how I had the courage to do it, they were really motivated by it, and they also had the courage, by getting inspired by hearing my voice. So that's a big change, in people's heart. I've changed their mindset, you know,
Mhm.
from being scared to being, to having courage. We're taking the risk of our planet, and we have to take risk as much as possible, if we want to achieve our goals.
Mhm.
So I think, yes, I feel that I have inspired many of them, not only in Africa, not only in global south, but not only in my country India, but also the global north people too. Even though they are responsible for what they're facing, they're also trying to convince their governments to, to fight, because they weren't really having that much courage before. But after seeing all our works, they have been just so inspired, and I can see the change, while hearing their words,
Hmm.
while interacting with them. So that's a big change.
Absolutely. Again, like that story needs to be told. And I think too, like the story around you like selling tea and coffee in a market stall to raise money to
Mhm.
go to COP27 needs to be told. And yet, like, that story of just like resilience and determination has been a little bit like, I don't know about overshadowed, but I was reading about the some of the news media reports on like these accusations against like your father and these kinds of things. And obviously, like this is a sensitive subject. I don't know what's going on with all of that. But it's something that has been reported on. I don't know if it's, something you want to talk about at all, or whether like, these accusations are part of, the state of India is cracking down on activism in general, right? Like there are
Right.
these allegations against Arundhati Roy, for example.
Hmm.
Um, I ask basically because I think there are many activists who are concerned about how these accusations are going to impact and affect your important mission, right?
Hmm.
And kind of skew the story in some ways, which should be a story, I think, of, as I say, like determination, hope, being driven to change the world.
I just want to say to those people who are trying, first of all, if I come to the government side, our governments always, people always try to politicize our voice in India because they really hate the fact that we are speaking the truth. It's not like I'm with some party or the other, and doing what they're saying. No, I'm just speaking out the truth. So it is really unacceptable at any cost that they are trying to politicize our voice, and to silence our voice too by threatening us. You know, I've even been detained a lot of times, but as a minor, they can't arrest me. So that's what I have an advantage as a climate activist. And you see, speaking about my father, he has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do in my climate activism. You see, people, many people are against me with what I'm doing and always try to
Hmm.
criticize, like, it's your parents who are handling your social media, dot, dot, dot. It's them who are sending you out to these conferences, to
Hmm.
make your name and everything. They have done everything for you. But that's not true at all.
Hmm.
Why are they saying that? Are they? I don't know why. I don't know why. The thing is, I love our mother nature, and what's wrong with loving our mother nature, and what's wrong with taking care of our planet? I don't know what's wrong with these people's mindset. We gotta change there. It is very, very rubbish that they have this kind of mindset, this kind of behavior to even criticize someone who's just working, who have taken a lot of risk. I have taken a lot of risk. You know, if you talk about the COP28, I have been detained, I have been taken out, I have been kicked out, they took my badge, I got threatened. What am I doing this for? I'm doing not for myself, but for you people who are criticizing me. So that is rubbish, and they should just shut their mouth. And I think they should just know that what I'm doing is for not for me, but for them. But I never fight with them because
Right.
I don't care what they're saying. I'm just doing my, they should just mind their own business.
Right.
And my father is completely not what I'm doing. Even though he might have done some wrong things in the past, let the people punish them if he
Right.
has done wrong.
Yeah. It shouldn't.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it is rubbish, as you to use your word, to tarnish a person's reputation
Mm,
when like the reputation that you have built that declares a kind of commitment to like world altering positive change needs to stand on its own, I think. And if it isn't allowed to stand on its own, then what are the kind of like underlying motivations, the kind of ulterior motives that are leading people to try and like attack or undermine or whatever, right? Like I think for the most part, what I have seen is a narrative that says, you are a person that decided what was happening at the world level was unacceptable, and disrupted it for like incredibly, like almost heroic reasons, that like you don't want this to be the course of world history, and for people to be consigned to these kinds of climate impacts, right?
Mhm.
So I would say, not that I need to tell you this, keep going, and don't listen to the haters. Like,
Yep.
hey, they're gonna hate, they're gonna do their thing. Obviously, I mean, a quarter of the people who attended COP28, a quarter of the people were fossil fuel lobbyists by some accounts. So we are up against enormous obstacles. There's no question. But you are showing what's possible when you keep pushing. The fact that a climate change law passed in Parliament, you have installed climate education as a mandatory subject. I mean, you and others, right, have demanded this successfully. Planting 3.5 million trees, moving to active transportation, replacing coal with renewable energy. I mean, like, you've articulated it really powerfully, this idea of a clean planet as a basic right, and a love of nature, which, as you say in your TED Talk, without nature, there's no food, there's no growth, there's no security, there's no future. So, as I said, I don't need to tell you to keep going. You're going to keep going. I just wish you the best. And this was a question that occurred to me. Like, what was it like to come home and receive a sort of hero's welcome? Must have been good, right?
Well, you see, I just told him to the people that, the feeling, I was feeling really happy that people, supported me in the fact that I did the disruption instead of being on the other negative people's side. Like many people also tell me that you're doing this for fame and stuff, but I just wanted to say to them that not to the people of my village, but to the other small side, negative side of the people, that the world already knows me, so I'm not doing this for fame.
Right.
Yes. And to the people who welcomed me, and the reception and everything, I'm really thankful to them, because, everything I did in my journey, in my activism, would have been impossible, where I am today, it would have been impossible without their love and support. So I was really thankful to them. And yes, I was really happy when they welcomed me and were really supportive in what I was doing, and were keep on pushing me forward, giving me all these positive mindsets that keep on going, and we need to succeed. We need to achieve our goals. So their love and support was really great. I'm really thankful to them, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, the cynics who say it's all about fame don't know what real leadership is, I think. And you're showing what real leadership is. Thanks again for talking to me. And keep up the fight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.